The rain wasn't heavy that morning, just enough to streak the tall glass doors of Holston Royce, making the whole building look a little less untouchable. Inside the marble lobby, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold, clinical glow over the rows of suited bodies weaving through. Phones glued to their palms, earbuds tucked in, everyone too busy, too important, to notice the man who just stepped through the door. Terrence Dupree didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. Dark navy trench coat, leather briefcase worn smooth at the corners, a calm posture that didn't beg for attention but maybe should have demanded it. He crossed the lobby, footsteps soundless against the marble, until he reached the front desk. Reception was manned by a woman, Megan. Her name tag read early 20s, blonde bob, AirPods still in from her commute. She barely glanced up, her manicured finger scrolling lazily across her phone. Terrence cleared his throat, polite but firm. "Good morning. I have a 10 a.m. meeting with the board of directors. Terrence Dupree." Megan blinked at him, gave a fake smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Vendors gotta use the back entrance." She didn't even bother checking her computer, didn't bother asking for ID, just dismissed him, like he was nothing more than a delivery guy who got lost. For a second, Terrence just stood there. Not out of confusion, but because he'd seen this scene play out before. Too many times. He could have corrected her. He could have flashed the contract worth $42 million that was sitting upstairs, waiting for his signature. He could have demanded to speak to someone with authority. Instead, Terrence just smiled. A small, private smile. The kind that says you just made the biggest mistake of your life and you don't even know it yet. Without another word, he turned and walked out into the misty street, the rain brushing against his coat. Across the lobby, a junior associate stepped off the elevator, caught sight of Terrence, and froze mid-stride, his face draining of color. "Mr. Dupree? You're early, they're waiting for you upstairs," the young man stammered, voice cracking. But Terrence was already pushing the door open, already gone. And inside that gleaming tower of wealth and pride, nobody knew yet that a single receptionist's smirk had just set off a chain reaction that would bring an entire company to its knees. But the crazy part? The real destruction hadn't even started yet. Before Terrence Dupree ever stepped into skyscrapers with million-dollar contracts in his pocket, he was just a kid from Mobile, Alabama, a place where sidewalks cracked, porches leaned, and dreams had to be built by hand. He grew up in a two-bedroom house that tilted a little to the left after a bad storm in '92. His mother cleaned hospital floors overnight to keep the lights on. His father, when he was around, fixed busted cars out of their driveway, charging just enough to scrape by. Nobody handed Terrence anything. There were no shiny internships, no distant relatives in the business, no college funds wrapped in bows. What he had instead was a second-hand desktop computer he pieced together from junk parts at 14. The screen flickered every 20 minutes. The keyboard stuck on the letter E, but Terrence didn't care. While other kids were sneaking out to parties, he stayed up under the buzzing kitchen light, teaching himself how code spoke to itself, how systems moved, how problems could be solved faster, smarter, cleaner. By the time he was 16, he wasn't just using computers. He was building them. College? He made it into Tuskegee University on a partial scholarship. No Greek life, no keg stands, no football Saturdays. Terrence stayed in the lab, in the library, in the background, stacking knowledge the way other students stacked beer cans. He launched his first company in a two-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. It failed. His second one? It didn't. D-Tech Solutions started as a tiny scheduling app for trucking companies built on pure hustle and a $400 loan from his mother's cousin. No angel investors, no Silicon Valley launches, just contracts, just delivery, just a system that worked. By the time he was 44, D-Tech wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, handling logistics for half the Southwest, running AI-driven platforms that Fortune 500 companies quietly depended on. Terrence didn't buy flashy suits. He didn't post yacht selfies. He didn't have to. Real power, the kind that actually mattered, didn't need to scream. And the craziest part? Holston and Royce knew all this. They had vetted him. Background checks, financial audits, client interviews. 7 months of negotiation. Terrence Dupree wasn't just a name on a contract. He was the deal. And somehow, Megan at the front desk thought he was there to drop off lunch. The rain tapped lightly against his coat as he moved farther from the building. The world would never see him throw a tantrum, raise his voice, or demand a meeting. Because Terrence had something stronger than anger. He had options. And in a few short minutes, he was about to use them. Terrence could have made a scene. He could have leaned across the counter, pulled out his phone, scrolled to the email chain with Holston and Royce's senior partners, proof that he wasn't some random vendor who wandered in from the rain. He could have raised his voice, demanded a supervisor, flashed the projected earnings report they had literally begged him to present in person. But he didn't. Instead, he stood there, just long enough for Megan to smirk again. That smug, dismissive little half-smile, the kind people give when they think they've already sized you up and filed you away. And in that moment, Terrence realized something. He didn't need this company. He didn't need their boardroom, their glass walls, their overpriced cucumber water. Because if Holston and Royce was arrogant enough to let a minimum wage receptionist become the gatekeeper to a $42 million deal, they didn't deserve it. Not now. Not ever. He gave Megan a polite nod, as if she'd done him a favor, and turned on his heel without a word. The rain outside hit a little harder now, streaking down the windows like slow tears. Terrence stepped back into the gray morning, coat collar turned up against the wind, his briefcase thudding softly against his leg. Across the lobby, the young associate still stood frozen, half lunging after him, stammering, "Wait, sir, Mr. Dupree, please." But Terrence didn't even slow down. Because here's the thing. When you know your worth, you don't argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding it. He let the door swing shut behind him. Let the opportunity slam itself closed, not on him, but on Holston and Royce. Megan, back at the desk, didn't even look up from her phone. Didn't know the name she just dismissed could have been her company's biggest win in a decade. Didn't know the ripple effect that had already started the moment Terrence's hand pushed open the door. And definitely didn't know that before the day was over. That quiet man with the old leather briefcase would set off a chain of events that would leave her unemployed, her firm humiliated, and her bosses scrambling to survive. All because she couldn't be bothered to check a name. Or maybe because she thought she didn't have to. The crazy part? Terrence wasn't mad. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't even surprised. He was just done. And that, right there, was the most dangerous thing of all. Terrence didn't get halfway down the block before his phone buzzed. He glanced down a message from his VP in Phoenix. "Everything greenlit for today's signing. Confirm when ready." Terrence slipped the phone back into his coat pocket without replying. Not yet. Not like this. He stood at the curb for a second, the rain misting against his face, staring up at the towering glass building behind him. Holston and Royce. So proud, so sure of themselves. He could almost hear them upstairs, the board of directors pacing, checking watches, sipping bitter coffee, waiting for a man they had already turned away. But Terrence wasn't heading back inside. He was heading somewhere much better. He scrolled through his contacts until he landed on a name. Travis R., CEO of Archeon Systems. Holston and Royce's biggest competitor. The same company that had courted Terrence for months, only to lose out when Holston swooped in with better terms. Or so they thought. Terrence tapped the call button. It rang twice before Travis picked up, voice half curious, half joking. "Terrence? Man, you don't call unless somebody screwed up. Who's the unlucky one today?" Terrence chuckled a soft, almost dangerous sound. "You busy?" he asked, stepping under the awning of a sandwich shop to shield his phone from the rain. "For you?" Never, Travis said. What's up? You remember that platform integration Holston's been dragging their feet on? Travis's voice sharpened instantly. Yeah, what about it? Weren't you supposed to close with them today? I was. Terrence's tone stayed calm, almost casual, until their front desk decided I wasn't worth the elevator ride. Dead silence on the other end. Then a low, disbelieving laugh from Travis. You're kidding. Nope. Told me to find the loading dock. He said it lightly, like he was describing the weather, not the professional insult of a lifetime. You serious about what I think you're about to do? Travis asked, the tension in his voice now razor sharp. Terrence watched a cab glide past, its headlights blurring in the rain. I'm ready to redirect the deal, if Archeon can match Holston's terms. You know we can, Travis said instantly. We were ready months ago. We just needed the green light. Terrence smiled to himself. Consider it lit. The relief and excitement in Travis's voice was almost immediate. Man, you don't know what this means. You won't regret it. I know, Terrence said simply. He ended the call, tucked the phone away, and stepped back into the drizzle, a quiet storm brewing behind him. Holston and Royce thought they still had time, still had leverage. But in less than 10 minutes, Terrence Dupree had moved the future out from under their feet, and they wouldn't even realize it until it was too late. Back in Holston and Royce's boardroom, the mood was starting to shift. The senior partners were checking their watches. The lead negotiator was refreshing his email over and over, waiting for a confirmation that wasn't coming. Somebody made a joke about Terrence being fashionably late. Nervous laughter rippled through the room, thin, brittle. Nobody wanted to admit it yet. But something felt off. They had spent 7 months chasing this deal, bending over backwards to get D-Tech's proprietary platform under their umbrella. Today was supposed to be a formality, a handshake, a photo op, a press release announcing their new powerhouse partnership. Instead, they were sitting there, sweating in tailored suits, with nothing but cucumber water and anxiety for company. Downstairs, Megan sipped her cold brew, scrolling through brunch photos from the weekend, oblivious to the fact that she had just lit the match. And outside, standing under the awning of a sandwich shop, Terrence Dupree had just made the call that would burn it all down. The real power move wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It didn't need to be. It was one quiet conversation. One quick decision. One deal rerouted while the rain still clung to the streets. And by the time Holston and Royce even realized Terrence wasn't coming back, he was already 10 steps ahead. He didn't slam doors. He didn't send angry emails. He didn't post some dramatic LinkedIn rant about discrimination or disrespect. He just moved. Shifted his value somewhere it would be seen. Somewhere it would be respected. And the craziest part? By the time the board finally sent an intern running downstairs to check on him, it was too late. The kid came back breathless, confused. He was here, he stammered. Reception thought he was a contractor. They told him to leave. Silence fell over the boardroom like a guillotine blade. Someone cursed under their breath. Another partner ran a hand through his hair, muttering, "You've got to be kidding me." Simone Barkley, one of the few sharp minds in the room, didn't say anything. She just sat there, already knowing the truth. If Terrence Dupree walked out, he wasn't coming back. And if he wasn't coming back, they weren't just losing a contract. They were losing the future. Upstairs in the boardroom, panic started to set in. The senior partners tried to keep it professional, tried to keep their voices even, but everyone could feel it. The crack in the armor. The invisible shift in the air. Maybe he had an emergency, someone muttered, refreshing their inbox for the 20th time. Maybe he's trying to renegotiate terms, another partner suggested, desperate for a logical excuse. But Simone Barkley, sharp-eyed and stone-faced, shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "That's not how he operates." Because Terrence Dupree wasn't just a businessman. He was a strategist. And when a strategist goes silent, it's never by accident. The board members didn't know it yet, but across town, Archeon Systems was already drafting a press release, already preparing the formal announcement that would send Holston and Royce's world spinning off its axis. By noon, the phone started ringing. Not with Terrence, not with D-Tech, but with clients. Clients who had heard rumors. Clients who suddenly had a lot of questions about why Holston's game-changing tech partnership had mysteriously gone dark. Downstairs, Megan was still oblivious, still tapping away on her phone, sipping her overpriced coffee. She didn't notice the cluster of senior managers gathering in the corner. Didn't notice the way the receptionist desk suddenly felt radioactive, like everyone was trying to pretend it wasn't there. She had no idea that her tiny moment of arrogance, a smirk, a dismissal, a flick of the wrist had already cost the company tens of millions. And by the time the press release hit inboxes around 2 p.m., it was too late. Archeon Systems is thrilled to announce a strategic partnership with D-Tech Solutions, the statement read. This collaboration marks a pivotal moment in logistics innovation across the Midwest. No names were mentioned. No shade was thrown. But inside Holston & Royce, it hit like a sledgehammer. Clients started forwarding the announcement to their reps with a simple question. Weren't we supposed to be working with D-Tech? The silence in the office grew thick. Emails stopped getting answered. Meetings were canceled. Even the janitorial staff moved more quietly, like they could sense the collapse happening behind the glass walls. Holston & Royce wasn't just losing a contract. They were losing credibility, losing trust. And in their world, once you lost trust, you lost everything. And it all started with a single moment. One small decision. One man they didn't think was worth their time. The humiliation didn't come all at once. It leaked in slow, heavy, and unstoppable. At first, Holston and Royce tried to act like everything was fine. Emails went out about unexpected developments and ongoing negotiations. Managers huddled behind closed doors, whispering strategies to spin the situation. But word travels fast. And bad news? Bad news travels even faster. By the next morning, the first blog picked it up. Tech giant ditches Holston deal after racial profiling incident at HQ. No names. No sources. Just enough detail to set the internet on fire. Within hours, the story exploded across Twitter, LinkedIn, and Reddit. People weren't just angry, they were furious. Everyone had a story like Terrence's lunch. Everyone had been underestimated, judged, dismissed. And now they had a face to rally behind. Screenshots started circulating blurry shots of Holston's lobby, angry threads about corporate gatekeeping, hashtags demanding accountability. Megan's name wasn't in the original articles. But the internet? The internet is fast, messy, and brutal. People found her. Old tweets resurfaced, nothing terrible, but just enough sarcasm, just enough casual arrogance to paint a picture. The kind of person who wouldn't even think twice before deciding who looked important and who didn't. Meanwhile, Holston's PR team scrambled. They issued a statement about reaffirming company values and expanding diversity training initiatives. Nobody cared. It was too late. The story wasn't about Holston's policies anymore. It was about pride, about judgment, about how one receptionist in one lobby cost $1 billion firm its future. Inside the office, the energy was unbearable. Executives who once strutted around now moved like shadows. People avoided eye contact in the elevators. Meetings got canceled. Desks were cleaned out quietly after hours. Nobody dared say it out loud. But Holston and Royce was bleeding out. And Terrence Dupree? He hadn't said a single word publicly. No press conference. No Instagram rant. No angry exposé. Just silence. The most devastating silence they had ever heard. Because the worst humiliation isn't when someone screams at you. It's when they don't even bother. They just move on and leave you standing in the ashes of your own arrogance. Megan didn't understand right away. When she showed up for work on Monday morning, iced coffee in hand, the lobby already felt different. Colder, heavier. The security guard barely nodded at her. The executive assistants, the ones who used to smile or toss a casual morning her way, avoided her completely, eyes down, moving past like she wasn't even there. Still, Megan brushed it off. Maybe everyone was just stressed about the news. Maybe nobody knew it was her. But deep down, she knew. It wasn't until just before lunch that her supervisor showed up at the front desk, 2 HR reps quietly flanking him. "Megan," he said, his voice low but clipped, "we need a word." She was led into a small side conference room, no windows, no distractions. Just a manila envelope sitting on the table. The conversation was short, colder than she expected. Words like reputation risk, public image, and conduct unbecoming were tossed around. Words that sounded sterile, clinical, but Megan could feel the fire burning underneath them. When she asked, panicked, "How was I supposed to know who he was?" The supervisor just looked at her for a long, heavy moment. "You didn't even ask." No outburst. No dramatic shouting. Just a signature on a form, a short walk to the elevators, and the realization that she wasn't coming back. No goodbye party. No farewell email. Just silence. As Megan rode the elevator down for the last time, she clutched the envelope to her chest, staring straight ahead, face blank. But inside her chest, it was chaos, fear, shame, disbelief. She hadn't just lost a job. She had become a cautionary tale. Down in the lobby, she moved quickly toward the doors, head down, trying to ignore the stares she felt real or imagined burning into her back. The glass doors swung closed behind her, cutting her off from the company she thought she had belonged to, cutting her off from the world she thought she understood. She never even saw Terrence again, never got the chance to explain herself, or apologize, or beg for forgiveness. But that's the thing about first impressions. You don't always get a second shot. And Megan learned too late that the cost of one careless moment isn't measured in apologies. It's measured in opportunities lost forever. While Holston and Royce scrambled to plug the leaks, while executives whispered in panic behind glass doors and Megan packed up her life in a cardboard box, Terrence Dupree was already halfway across the country. No press conferences. No victory laps. No social media posts bragging about who he took down. Just a man in a dark coat, boarding a flight, leather briefcase in hand, moving toward his next meeting, his next win. Because real power doesn't shout. It doesn't stomp or demand attention. It moves quietly, deliberately, reshaping the ground underneath the people too arrogant to see it coming. And Terrence? He was a master at moving silently. By the time Holston's senior partners tried to reach out half-baked apologies, desperate offers to revisit the partnership, it was already over. Terrence had made his decision on that rainy sidewalk, and once he moved, he never looked back. Archeon Systems welcomed D-Tech with open arms. The ink on the new deal dried faster than anyone thought possible. And within weeks, Archeon's market share surged, powered by D-Tech's cutting-edge platform that Holston had spent months begging for. The tech world took notice. So did investors. So did clients. One by one, longtime Holston partners started pulling out, citing loss of confidence, citing reputational risk, citing the simple, brutal truth. If you can't recognize value when it walks right through your front door, you don't deserve it. Inside Holston's towering offices, it felt like the walls were closing in. Resignations piled up. Stock value tanked. Partnerships dissolved. They tried to issue new statements. They tried to launch new initiatives. They even tried rebranding efforts, sleek new logos, diversity committees, empty promises. But the damage wasn't something you could slap a fresh coat of paint over. Because at the heart of the collapse wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't just bad PR. It was something worse. A fundamental failure to respect the right people at the right time. And that's not something a press release can fix. Meanwhile, Terrence sat across gleaming conference tables, closing bigger deals, expanding Tech's reach into new sectors, building an empire on the very respect Holston had refused to give. He didn't need their building. He didn't need their boardroom. He built his own. And he did it all, without ever raising his voice. In the end, Holston and Royce didn't collapse because of a single deal, or a single receptionist, or even a single decision. They collapsed because they forgot the oldest rule in business and in life. You never know who you're talking to. They built their empire on image, on handshakes at country clubs, on polished smiles and perfect resumes. But they forgot that real power doesn't always come dressed in a three-piece suit. It doesn't always carry a title or announce itself at the door. Sometimes, real power wears a worn briefcase and a rain-soaked coat. Sometimes, real power stands in front of you, calm, patient, giving you one chance to do the right thing, and you don't even see it. Terrence Dupree never raised his voice. He never threatened. He never begged. He simply chose to take his value elsewhere. And in doing so, he reminded everyone who heard his story loudly, silently, that respect isn't something you give when someone proves their worth. It's something you give before you know who they are. Because the truth is, anyone can shake your hand after you've made them rich. The real measure of character is how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. Holston and Royce lost $42 million in a single morning. They lost clients, credibility, and control of the future they thought they owned. But the biggest thing they lost? A lesson they were too arrogant to learn until it was too late. Terrence didn't burn their company down with rage. He didn't slam doors or drag them through the mud. He just moved. Moved forward. Moved higher. Moved beyond the reach of people who couldn't see past their own assumptions. And maybe that's what stung Holston the most. They weren't destroyed by scandal or sabotage. They were destroyed by a man who didn't need them to win, and who taught them that true power doesn't ask for permission to be respected. It simply walks away and lets the world catch up or crumble trying. If you liked this story, share it, talk about it, reflect on it. Because somewhere right now, someone is being judged for how they look instead of who they are. And the cost of that mistake might just be everything.